Hello there, RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Alchemia Interactive, the development studio for Gothic Remake, has recently uploaded another making of episode. These episodes always have a ton of info about the game and a bunch of new gameplay clips. We got to see some cool tricks with the frost magic, a lot of info about the open world and NPC schedules, a brand new armor system, new content for all the locations in the game, more options for quests, character models, and we even got an update for the controversial female characters. I'm going to break down all of these segments in the video, talk about what I personally find the most interesting, and help you understand what we can expect to see in the remake. I also want to include some info from the previous development update, because I didn't get to cover that one, and there's some overlapping info about some features. And I just want to include more info about the remake in general, so hopefully people find it useful. We still don't have the exact release date, but we know the game should come out in early 2026. I mean, February is pretty early, but so is March and April, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer for the exact release date. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they announce it in the next development update, possibly in early March.
I wouldn't have expected anything else from you.
Anyway, let's talk about our first topic. There is a great clip from the newest Devlog video where the nameless hero is using frost magic to walk on water. I think small details like this make the world exploration a lot more fun and interactive, and in Gothic's case it certainly helps with immersion as well. As you probably know, immersion is a huge part of Piranha game, so seeing stuff like this just makes sense. Not to mention it looks pretty damn cool, and possibly very useful when exploring zones that have water surfaces. Some of the new content they plan to include will have more such zones, but even the base game has a decent amount of water areas. For example, the Brotherhood camp, but there are smaller zones where you can find water as well. Speaking about interacting with the environment, the creatures in the open world of Gothic Remake should feel even more alive. I say even more because even the OG Gothic 1 did a pretty good job with this. You can go back to this 25 plus years old RPG and it still feels more alive than the majority of recent open world RPGs. It's kind of crazy to think about, and it's not an over-exaggeration. Creatures in Gothic Remake should have even more ways to interact with the environment around them and the player. There's an interesting shot of a scavenger corpse, I think, and we can see how the process of decomposition works in real time. They didn't talk about this in particular, but it was part of the conversation about the living and breathing open worlds. I want to take a second to talk about this, because I think it's pretty cool. Although this will probably be one of those features that a lot of people will just turn off in the menu because of the performance. If everything you kill in the game turns into corpses who hang around and they also have decomposition elements, it can probably affect the performance in a negative way. Although there was an interesting segment about the performance when they talked about the character models. One of the guys in the development video said they made a special tool for characters which allows them to gain a significant FPS boost than normal. So maybe they will have similar tools for this as well, we are not sure. It's yet another small feature that should help with immersion and creating a believable open world. They also said the creatures will interact with each other, which was to be expected. Even the OG Gothic had some pretty cool features, like creatures fighting each other and even some animations for eating each other. The remake should probably have all of this and much more. Speaking of which, there is a pretty cool shot when the bloodfly is eating something from its stinger, or when the lizard is drinking water from the river. Those are some of the clips which they used to showcase how creatures are interacting with the world. But it's not just about the creatures. What's even more important is how human NPCs are interacting with other NPCs and the environments. Alchemia developers mentioned how NPCs will have more reactions to what's going on around them. For example, people will leave their current task to listen when Balpervez is trying to recruit them to the Brotherhood in the old camp. NPCs will carry objects, react to weather, and so on. What really got me excited is when they mentioned how certain events will change the daily routines of NPCs, as well as the environments. This should happen after some major story points, and I would expect to see something similar after each chapter. Changing the routines of NPCs is one thing, but changing the environment implies something much bigger. So I really can't wait until we get some more info about this particular topic. I can't stress enough how important it is to get the daily routines of NPCs right in the remake. That was always one of my biggest concerns about the remake, the AI in general. They made a good decision to improve the system, but it was already pretty damn good, even in the original game. Like I said before, it's one of the biggest reasons why the game still holds up today, regardless of the severely outdated visuals and clunky controls. After watching this segment I feel a bit relieved, but I'm still not entirely convinced. And I won't be until I try the game out for myself. Now let's talk about the new armor system. The way that armor worked in Gothic 1 was very basic but very effective. You only had one slot for the armor set, which came in one piece. And each faction would have around 5 armor sets that you would get when you progress enough in the game. It also had a couple of armors which are not tied to any faction. It was not a bad variety of armor sets, especially for such an old RPG, but it's pretty basic for today's standards. Even so, it felt so good when you could finally progress enough in one of the camps to earn the new armor. It's one of the reasons why the progression system in Gothic felt so amazing. The remake is going to try and improve the armor system in a couple of ways, and the newest development update has a lot of new info about this. The idea is to give the player the option to improve his armor pieces by talking to specific NPCs like Fisk or Wolf. Yes, I said armor pieces and not armor piece. Gothic Remake is going to have 3 slots for the player's armor: the chest, belt, and pants/boots. I think this was a no-brainer decision because, like I said, the OG Gothic felt a bit basic when it comes to armor. Not only for the player character, but the variety of armor sets on NPCs was not amazing. Now we can see a lot of different variations of these armor sets on NPCs, which is pretty cool. And more importantly, all of those variations will be available for the player as well when you start messing around with the new armor system. And speaking of which, all 3 pieces can be improved in various ways. Most of these upgrades will boost all of your defenses, but they also change how the item looks. So it seems like even if 2 players have the same armor pieces in each slot, they can look almost completely different depending on these upgrades. I have to say that I'm really liking what I'm seeing here because instead of introducing something entirely new, they chose to improve the old system by expanding it. The same can be said about a lot of things related to this remake, not only the armor system. Anyway, the cost of these upgrades seem pretty high, as it probably should be. They also mentioned a very interesting defensive stat that you can get from one of these upgrades. If I understood this properly, you can even have an upgrade on your armor that will reduce the fall damage, which should help you explore the world faster. That's pretty damn cool, and I guess it would make sense if that's some lighter upgrade for your boots/pants. Which only makes me wonder if they're going to have similar fun upgrades, and not only these defensive stats that we can see here. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I certainly hope to see more of these unique upgrades. I think they could make the gameplay really fun. Whatever the case might be, I just hope the progression system itself feels rewarding, like in the original game. That should be the ultimate goal with the armor system in Gothic. It's supposed to feel very good when you get your hands on a new armor. If the remake manages to pull this off successfully, all of these extra armor features will be a big plus in general. If that's not the case, nobody will care about these new armor upgrades.
Okay, let's forget about our little argument.
One of the goals of the remake is to expand the content for some old locations, as well as to include some brand new content and new locations. One of those existing locations that's going to get this treatment is the old monk monastery. This place looked really cool in the original game, but it always felt a bit empty and unfinished. Even though we had a couple of quests related to this place, it felt like Piranha Bytes could have done something unique here. According to Milton, one of your buddies from the game, this was supposed to be an old monk monastery. A place where they worshipped a god who taught them how to transform into different creatures. If I'm not mistaken, that should be the god of balance, Adanos, according to transformation magic we could get from druids in Gothic 3. Anyway, all of these monks disappeared in an unknown event before the barrier was raised. Those are some pretty cool details about the lore, especially considering the lore in Gothic is very vague. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Alchemia is going to expand this place and the new content related to it. Speaking about expanding existing places in the game, the Sleeper Temple and the Tower of Zardas are supposed to get a similar treatment. We know next to nothing about the Sleeper Temple, except the fact that it was very challenging to do, for obvious reasons. The original Sleeper Temple was already pretty big in Gothic, but it wasn't without its issues. Some of the fights in there were pretty stupid, to be honest, so I hope to see some improvements on that field. The puzzles were okay, but I'm guessing they're going to try and improve that as well. The Tower of Zardas looks almost unrecognizable from this footage, but in the best way possible, I would say. Look at this, it looks freaking amazing. We are not sure if they're going to implement some new content related to Zardas and his tower, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was the case. The dev update from December mentioned that we're going to get around 20 to 25% of new side quest content in the remake. They also expanded original quests with new options, which I think it's even more exciting. The game is supposed to be way bigger in general. Matthias Filler, one of the OG writers of Gothic 1, is also working on the remake. I think that's amazing because he finally got the chance to include everything he wanted the original game to have and also fix some plot holes. In the previous development update, they talked a lot about orcs. They pointed out some differences between orcs from Gothic 1 and Gothic 3. Orcs were way more sophisticated and eloquent in Gothic 3 while still being a brutal war machine. But Gothic 1 and 2 had a lot more savage version of orcs. I think it's really cool they're trying to expand the language of orcs and make them look and sound more authentic. The orcs in the mining colony are basically trapped and they almost have no resources. Alchemia also confirmed that the orcs we meet and fight in Gothic 1 were definitely not the most advanced part of orc society. That was really obvious, but I know some parts of the Gothic fanbase thought that the orcs in Gothic 3 didn't make any sense. I always disagreed with that silly argument, simply because it would imply there is only one type of orcs in the Gothic lore, which sounds boring.
Okay, let's forget about our little argument.
I'm really excited to see how they plan to include more options for the existing quests. They said you should be able to take different paths, talk with different NPCs, and see different results after finishing these quests. That sounds great in theory, but I only hope they don't make the quests worse. I also like how they mentioned one of the biggest problems with Gothic in later chapters. Even though Gothic allowed you to do whatever you want, this didn't last until the very end of the game. The later chapters in the game were much more linear and they lacked side contents. Gothic Remake doesn't intend to make the same mistake. They were not very specific with how they plan to expand these chapters. However, all of the things we mentioned so far related to new content is probably going to be a big factor when it comes to this. For example, there is a cool clip when the nameless hero is trying to attack a caravan, which is a brand new event. They have all the freedom in the world to create similar events, which will expand the game quite a bit. A big part of the newest update was about character models / faces. They did some comparisons with the old models from the original game and showed us a lot of new faces in the remake. I think Piranha Bytes did something amazing with these character faces back in 2001. You can still tell them apart even though they have like 5 pixels on their face. And more importantly, they managed to create memorable characters. So it's kind of surreal to watch these updated character faces in such high resolution. They showcased Tier A and Tier B characters. The characters you interact with the most are Tier A, basically. Tier B characters are less important for the story, but certainly very important in general. And even these Tier B characters look pretty damn good if you ask me. Actually, some of them look a bit too realistic, but then again, this is supposed to be the concept art. But we also got to see a lot of 3D models up close. Now, we still didn't get to see the update for female character faces, but we got to see a brand new scene with the female slave that was in the original cutscene. We only got to see this intro from one angle, but it seems her visual design is faithful to the original, it's almost identical. It's not much, but I think it's not a coincidence. It's probably a sign of what's to come, and I think they will update some of these old characters we got to see before in those heavily controversial scenes. And Another segment I want to briefly mention is about various weather effects, which are going to drastically affect the overall look of the game. I'm really curious about this, because we didn't have anything similar in the original game. Night and day cycle, along with some raining every now and then, was everything we had in Gothic. So having so many different weather effects, which can even change the strength of the waves, is something I really wish to see in this game. And that will be everything I wanted to talk about related to these Gothic Remake updates. Last time I covered the game, we had a huge combat update that you can check out if you somehow missed it. This was a pretty good update as well, and I just hope the next video will also announce the release date. I'll be here to cover everything related to this game, so stick around. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.